Easter. You think you know it? Chocolate eggs. Hot cross buns. Maybe a roast lamb if your family is fancy. But what if I told you that for thousands of years, long before the chocolate bunny existed, people were eating dishes so ancient, so symbolically loaded, so deeply strange and beautiful, that they make our modern Easter table look like a placeholder? Today we're going back, way back, to midnight soups consumed the second Christ was declared risen, to bread baked in the shape of a traitor, specifically so it could be burned and eaten, to a stew where every single ingredient is a theological statement. These are 10 Easter dishes history nearly forgot. But for generations, for millennia, everybody ate them. Let's begin. Number 1. Simnel cake, the resurrection cake. We start in medieval England with a cake that carries more symbolism per bite than almost any food on earth. It's called Simnel cake, and it has been baked for Easter since at least the 13th century. The name itself is ancient, derived from the Latin simila, meaning fine wheat flour. Some say it comes from the Anglo-Saxon simnel. There's even a folk legend that a couple named Simon and Nell couldn't agree on whether to bake or boil their cake, so they did both, and named it Simnel. That's almost certainly not true, but it's a wonderful story. Here's what makes this cake extraordinary: it's not just a cake. It's a theological document made of marzipan. The cake has 2 layers of almond marzipan, one baked inside the center, one pressed and toasted on top. It's rich with spices: nutmeg, cinnamon, mixed spice, sultanas, currants, mixed peel. But the defining feature, the thing that makes every food historian stop and stare, is the crown. 11 marzipan balls. Not 12. 11. They represent the 11 faithful apostles of Jesus Christ. Judas Iscariot is deliberately, pointedly excluded. You eat the 12 apostles of Easter and Judas isn't at the table. That single missing ball carries the weight of one of history's greatest betrayals. Originally, Simnel cake was eaten on Mothering Sunday, the 4th Sunday of Lent, when servant girls would bake it and carry it home to their mothers. Over time it migrated to Easter Sunday where it sits today. Today, Simnel cake is still a cornerstone of the British and Irish Easter table. You'll find it in every bakery from March onwards, from classic versions to modern interpretations with pistachio marzipan, lemon zest, or dark chocolate. But the 11 balls remain. They always remain. 2. Magiritsa, the Greek midnight resurrection soup. Now we travel to Greece. And we travel to midnight. It is Holy Saturday, the most solemn night of the Greek Orthodox calendar. The church is packed. Candles are unlit. The priest stands before the congregation in darkness, holds a single flame and declares, Christos anesti. Christ is risen. The flame passes from candle to candle. The church explodes with light. Bells ring across the entire country simultaneously. And then, every family in Greece does the exact same thing. They rush home to eat Magiritsa. This is a soup made from lamb offal, liver, lung, heart, intestines, with spring onions, fresh dill, chopped lettuce, rice and a silky egg lemon sauce called avgolemono. It is rich, herbaceous, unctuous, deeply savory, and it is consumed only once a year, at midnight on Holy Saturday to break 40 days of Lenten fasting. The word Magiritsa comes from the Greek mageros, meaning cook or master of the kitchen. And this dish is as ancient as Greek cooking itself. Because here is what most people don't know. Before it was a Christian Easter ritual, it was a pagan Greek one. Ancient Greeks believed that consuming the organs of a sacrificial animal connected the eater directly to divine energy. When a lamb was sacrificed at the temple of Dionysus, the organs were consumed immediately. They were the most perishable, the most sacred. The communal eating of the animal's inner life was an act of ingesting the divine. Early Christianity absorbed this framework entirely. The lamb became the Lamb of God. The midnight feast became the breaking of the fast of the resurrection. The organs remained. Today, Magiritsa is as central to Greek Easter as the liturgy itself. Restaurants across Athens serve it only on Holy Saturday night. Modern Greeks often use lamb liver only, skipping the lung, but the soul of the dish, that sacred 2,000-year-old midnight soup, remains entirely intact. 3. Capirotada, the Mexican bread pudding of morning. From Greece to Mexico. And from midnight to the 40 days of Lent itself. Capirotada is a Mexican bread pudding. But to call it merely a bread pudding is like calling the Sistine Chapel merely a ceiling. This dish is consumed throughout Lent and Holy Week across Mexico. And every single ingredient carries explicit Christian symbolism, encoded there by Franciscan missionaries in the 16th century. Let me walk you through it. The bread represents the body of Christ. The piloncillo syrup, raw, dark, caramel deep Mexican cane sugar, represents the blood of Christ. The cinnamon sticks are the wooden cross. The whole cloves are the nails of the crucifixion. The melted cheese draped over the top is the holy shroud. You don't eat capirotada. You meditate on the passion of Christ through your stomach. But the story goes even deeper than the colonial missionaries. Because before the Spanish arrived, indigenous Mexicans were already making a ritual bread offering during spring ceremonies honoring the maize god. A sacred communal dish. An offering to the earth, to the cycle of death and rebirth. When the Franciscans came, they didn't destroy this practice. They layered Catholic theology over it, ingredient by ingredient, symbol by symbol, until the dish carried two complete civilizations of spiritual meaning simultaneously. Today, capirotada is prepared throughout Lent in every Mexican state, with regional variations so distinct they're almost different dishes. In Sonora, no cheese, it's sweet and dry. In Oaxaca, banana slices and a dark caramel. In Jalisco, very sweet, almost a dessert. Restaurants in Mexico City and Guadalajara feature it specifically from Ash Wednesday through Easter Sunday. For millions of Mexican families, the smell of piloncillo and cinnamon is Lent. 4. Tsoureki, the braided bread of rebirth. Back to Greece, this time on Easter morning, for the most beautifully constructed bread in the Christian world. Tsoureki. A braided, golden, malab-scented sweet bread. And one of the oldest Easter foods still made in exactly the way it has always been made. The braid is not decorative. It is doctrinal. 3 strands woven into one represent the Holy Trinity. The braided shape itself was considered magically protective in ancient Thrace, the culture that preceded Greece in the region. It was believed that evil spirits could not unravel a braid. Women made braided bread offerings to earth goddesses during spring festivals, and the bread was believed to contain the divine protection woven inside its very structure. At the center of the tsoureki, pressed into the braid before baking, sits one hard-boiled egg dyed brilliant crimson red. This egg represents the blood of Christ and the sealed tomb from which he would rise. But the red egg predates Christianity by centuries. Ancient Greeks dyed eggs red for Dionysus, the god of wine, of ecstasy, of death and rebirth. The same red. The same egg. Different theology. What makes tsoureki unlike any other bread is its flavor. It is scented with 2 extraordinary ingredients. Malab, ground seeds from a wild cherry pit, giving a warm, slightly bitter, intensely aromatic flavor unlike anything else. And mastic, the resin from mastic trees found only on the Greek island of Chios, which gives a faintly piney, resinous, ancient flavor. These 2 flavors together are the taste of Greek Easter. Nothing else on earth smells like tsoureki baking. Today it is sold year-round in Greek bakeries, but the Easter version, larger, richer, more intensely scented, is in an entirely different category. Families send it as gifts. It appears on every Easter table. For Greeks worldwide, its scent is the smell of Easter morning itself. 5. Babka Wielkanocna, the Polish Easter grandmother cake. Poland now. And a cake so charged with superstition that entire households used to hold their breath while it baked. Babka Wielkanocna, the Polish Easter grandmother cake. The name Babka means grandmother or old woman. This tall, golden, saffron-yellow cake baked in a fluted ring mold wasn't named after grandmothers by accident. In pre-Christian Slavic spring rites, bread shaped like the human body was offered to earth deities to ensure fertility of the soil and safety in childbirth. When Christianity arrived in Poland, the babka became an Easter offering, its tall crown shape now symbolizing the risen Christ, but the sense that it carried ancestral feminine energy never quite left. The recipe is extraordinary. Traditional versions call for up to 40 egg yolks. 40. The batter is saffron yellow, genuinely golden from the spice, and enriched with butter, cream, rum-soaked raisins and candied citrus peel. The result is a cake of almost impossible richness, with a crumb so fine and moist it seems to defy physics. But the most remarkable tradition around this cake isn't its ingredients. It's the fear. Polish folk belief held that if a babka sank or collapsed in the oven, it was a terrible omen. Illness, death, crop failure. A bad year ahead for the whole household. And so, while the babka baked, the entire house would fall silent. Women walked on tiptoe. No loud voices. No slamming doors. Children were hushed. The family prayed continuously until the cake emerged, tall, golden, perfect, safe. Today, Babka Wielkanocna is blessed by a priest on Holy Saturday morning in the Wielkanocna ceremony, where families bring baskets of Easter food to church. Polish bakeries in Warsaw, Krakow, Chicago and New York sell thousands in the days before Easter. The fear of the sunken cake? still very much alive. Lamb's lettuce soup, the forgotten Easter broth of medieval Europe. This is the dish that has almost entirely disappeared from Easter tables. And it's the one I find most moving. In medieval Europe, Easter came at the most difficult food moment of the year. Winter stores were nearly exhausted. The spring harvest was weeks away. And only the hardiest earliest greens had pushed through the cold ground. One of those greens was Valerianella locusta, lamb's lettuce, mache. And in German-speaking regions, Rapunzel. Yes, that Rapunzel. The fairy tale of Rapunzel, a pregnant woman craving greens from a witch's garden so desperately that her husband steals them and loses his daughter, is actually an encoded memory of medieval food desperation. After long winters, pregnant women craved fresh greens so intensely it was described as a kind of madness. The plant was so valuable, so scarce at that time of year, that stealing it was a genuine crime. Medieval monasteries cultivated lamb's lettuce specifically for Holy Week. Monks consumed it as a symbol of new life breaking through dead winter earth. A perfect embodiment of resurrection, fragile, tender, the first green in a dead world. The soup itself was simple. Lamb's lettuce, spring onions, leeks, barley or spelt, sometimes sorrel for acidity, sometimes saffron in wealthier households. A thin, bright, herb-scented broth that tasted of the first moment winter breaks. Today this soup has almost entirely vanished. Lamb's lettuce is popular in French and Italian salads, but the soup is largely forgotten. Culinary historians and farm-to-table chefs occasionally revive it as a first course for historically themed Easter menus. It is the most humble, the most human, the most honest Easter dish on this list. It represents the Easter of real people, cold, hungry, grateful for spring. 7. Spit-roasted lamb, Kokoretsi, the organ feast of the ancient world. We return to Greece for what is perhaps the most ancient Easter food still eaten in enormous quantities today. Kokoretsi. And if you're squeamish, hold on because this one goes deep. Lamb or goat intestines, cleaned thoroughly, wrapped tightly around a metal spit layered with the animal's organs. Liver, lung, heart, kidneys, sweetbreads. The whole structure is secured, seasoned generously with dried oregano, paprika, black pepper, sea salt, and basted with olive oil and lemon. Then it is placed over a wood fire, olive wood or oak, and slow roasted for 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours. Easter morning in Greece is organized around this spit. Families gather at dawn to start the fire. The smell of Kokoretsi roasting fills entire neighborhoods by 8 a.m. It is arguably the most communal, most visceral, most ancient Easter ritual still practiced anywhere in the Christian world. Because this dish is a direct, unbroken thread from ancient Greek sacrifice. When a lamb was sacrificed at the temple of Dionysus or Apollo, the priest retained the finest cuts for the gods, burned on the altar as an offering. The community consumed the organs immediately because they were the most perishable. And the communal consumption of the sacrificial animal's inner organs was an act of ingesting the divine, of making the sacred physical, of incorporating the holy into the human body. Early Christians absorbed this entire framework. The lamb became the Lamb of God. Easter became the sacrificial feast. The organs remained on the spit. In recent decades, Kokoretsi has been periodically threatened with banning by the European Union due to organ meat regulations, each attempted ban triggering fierce cultural outrage in Greece. It is consumed by millions every Easter Sunday, by devout Christians and secular Greeks alike. That 3,000-year-old thread from Dionysus to Pacha? Still unbroken. 8. Pashka, the Russian Orthodox cheese tower of the resurrection. Russia now. And the most architecturally distinctive Easter food in the world. Pashka. And that word is the Russian word for Easter itself, derived from the Hebrew Pesach, meaning Passover. This dish doesn't just celebrate the holiday. It is named for it. Pashka is a molded sweet cheese dessert made from Tsoureki, Russian fresh curd cheese, combined with egg yolks, heavy cream, butter, sugar, vanilla, raisins, candied citrus peel, and blanched almonds. The mixture is pressed into a tall pyramidal wooden mold called a Pashka forma, and left under weight overnight to drain and set into a firm, silken, aromatic tower. But the mold is not just a shape. The wooden mold is carved with the letters XB, Christos Voskris, Christ is risen, and with Orthodox crosses, wheat sheaves, and floral symbols. When the Pashka is unmolded and placed on the Easter table, those letters and symbols are pressed into its surface. You don't just eat the resurrection. You eat the proclamation of it. The pyramid shape represents the sealed tomb of Christ. The XB letters are the announcement of what happened inside it. This dish cannot be eaten before Easter. It is brought to church in a basket on Holy Saturday and blessed by a priest before it can be consumed. Eating Pashka before the blessing is simply not done. The ancient Slavic roots of this dish trace back to Veles, the underworld deity of earth and cattle, for whom offerings of fermented milk and cheese were pressed into molds carved with protective symbols during spring festivals. The blessing, the symbols, the pyramid, all survived the transition from paganism to orthodoxy, renamed and reframed but essentially unchanged. Today Pashka is still made by Orthodox families across Russia, Ukraine, the Balkans and diaspora communities worldwide. The ritual of making Pashka, kulach bread and red eggs together on Holy Thursday is one of the most preserved culinary traditions in the Orthodox Christian world. 9. Fanesca, the Ecuadorian 12-grain Easter stew. Ecuador now, Holy Week, and the most philosophically complex Easter dish in existence. Fanesca is a thick, creamy stew made from 12 different grains and legumes. Well, each one representing one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ. And the salt cod, the bacalao soaked for days to remove its salt and soften its flesh, represents Christ himself. The 12 grains are fresh fava beans, corn, lentils, green peas, chocho, lupini beans, zambo, squash seeds, mel loco, peanuts, rice and several more depending on the regional tradition. Each is prepared separately, then combined into a pumpkin and cream base that is rich, golden, deeply savory and sweet simultaneously. It is served with fried ripe plantains, empanadas and hard-boiled eggs on top. This dish is eaten only during Holy Week. It has no other occasion. Its preparation is a multi-day family project, and it encodes 500 years of colonial history and thousands of years of indigenous tradition in a single bowl. Because long before the Franciscan missionaries arrived in the 16th century, the Incas and their predecessor cultures held massive spring harvest festivals honoring Pachamama, Mother Earth. The first grains of the season were cooked together in a communal pot, every grain given equally, as an offering of gratitude and a prayer for future abundance. The Spanish missionaries didn't destroy this ritual. They reinterpreted it. 12 grains became 12 apostles. The spring harvest pot became the Last Supper table. The bacalao, a European ingredient the Incas had never encountered, arrived as Christ himself, placed at the center of an Andean ritual as if he had always been there. Today, Fanesca is considered the most important dish of the Ecuadorian culinary calendar. Restaurants in Quito and Guayaquil serve it only from Palm Sunday through Good Friday, and the lines stretch around the block. It is a dish that contains two entire civilizations, alive in every spoonful. 10. Judas bread, the dark Easter bread of betrayal. And we end with the darkest, strangest, most psychologically raw Easter food of all. Judas bread. In Spain, Portugal, Brazil, Mexico, Venezuela, and parts of Greece, communities gathered on Holy Saturday morning to ceremonially burn an effigy of Judas Iscariot, the man who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. This ritual, the quema de Judas, the burning of Judas, was and remains an act of collective catharsis. The rage of the faithful, made communal, made fire. And alongside the burning effigy, or sometimes instead of it, there was bread. Bread shaped into a human figure. The figure of Judas. This bread, pan de Judas in Spanish, pão de Judas in Portuguese, was baked specifically to be destroyed and eaten. Sometimes filled with raisins representing the 30 silver coins. Sometimes flavored with anise, orange peel, or honey. In some traditions, stuffed with firecrackers so that when burned in the street, Judas would explode. The act of eating the enemy's form is ancient magic. It is found in cultures from ancient Persia to Rome to indigenous Mesoamerica. If you consume the image of your adversary, you gain power over them. You incorporate them. You end them. But the roots go further still. In every pre-Christian European culture, the end of winter required a ritual. A spirit of winter, or a demon of the old year, was burned in effigy to clear the way for spring. Ancient Rome, ancient Persia, ancient Gaul, all practiced versions of this purification fire. The church assigned the role of the winter demon to Judas, and the bread became the edible extension of a ritual older than Christianity itself. Today, the quema de Judas tradition is vigorously alive in Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, Greece, and parts of Spain. In Mexico City, giant papier-mâché Judas figures, often depicting corrupt politicians rather than the biblical figure, are loaded with fireworks and exploded in the streets on Easter Saturday morning, to the enormous delight of the neighborhood. The bread version still appears in artisan bakeries in Seville, Lisbon, and São Paulo during Holy Week. It is Easter's most honest dish. Not the sweetness of new life, not the gold of resurrection, not the warmth of family gathered. Just the burning of what betrayed us and the eating of its ashes. 10 dishes, 10 civilizations. 10,000 years of human beings trying to make sense of death and spring and what comes after both. The lamb on the spit at dawn. The midnight soup to break 40 days of silence. The grandmother cake no one dared breathe near. The 12-grain stew that carries an entire conquered culture inside it. The bread shaped like a traitor burned in the street. Easter's table is the oldest table in the world. And what sits on it, it turns out, is everything. Every fear, every hope, every harvest prayer, every theological argument, every grandmother's superstition, every empire that rose and fell and left its flavors behind. If you enjoyed this, and if you're now genuinely hungry and slightly disturbed, which was the goal, share this with someone who thinks Easter is just chocolate. Show them what they're missing. And whatever your table looks like this Easter, make it strange, make it ancient, make it count.